Hello and welcome to another episode of The Wannabe Entrepreneur, the podcast about what's really like to bootstrap a company. Today we have another interview for you, the listener. I have with me Anna Bibikova. Hey Anna, thank you so much for joining this session of The Wannabe Entrepreneur.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. Anna has a very interesting entrepreneurial and bootstrapping story, and I hope to learn more about that and learn also from Anna's experience. One thing that definitely kind of caught my eye was the fact that you had a very interesting business making 4 million, but then it was kind of consuming too much out of you. You had a burnout, you decided to change things around, and now you are more in the online business, and you have your own consultancy company. You have also a lot of interesting projects that you jump in and you help other people building their products, doing user research, doing marketing. So I definitely think that there's a lot for us to talk about. And I would start things off, as I always in these interviews, to ask you, Anna, to introduce yourself in your own words and speak a little bit about you to our listeners, if that's okay.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this chance to talk about my journey. Yeah, that's as you mentioned. I used to have a pretty impressive business. It was like almost 4 years ago when I had this, went through this burnout. Well, since I remember myself, I've been always inclined to do some kind of businesses. So I think I was doing some entrepreneurial stuff since I was 9 years old, maybe. I just tweeted, I believe 2 days ago, that my first job that I landed, it was, I was in India then. My parents were invited to work in India when I was 9. And when I was
Mm-hmm.
11, I pitched myself to my schoolmates' parents that I could be a very good candidate to help my schoolmates with math homework assignments.
When you were 11.
Yeah, I was 11 then, and I've never been, a very talented math student. I believe I'm just very like on the very average level. But because I went to school, I was mostly at that time homeschooled, but I just went to very remote Indian village to do some classes like geography and I think environment studies or something like that. So, but my level of math was very impressive for this little remote Indian village. And I pitched myself to my classmates' parents that I could help their children with homework math assignments. I actually managed to land on my first job this way. In my favor, I would say that I didn't get paid. It was an exchange. The sisters, they taught me, gave me lessons of Bharatnatyam, the Indian classic dance. And in exchange, I taught their little brothers some math. So that was the deal. And it was
Yeah.
my first entrepreneurial project. It was so funny. Then I went to the university. I actually have a degree in Oriental Studies, and I envisioned
Wow.
myself in academia when I
Mm-hmm.
studied. I wanted to, write books, maybe do some archaeological research, go back to India again because I was so fascinated and about this country. I was so passionate about its culture and history and traditions and cuisine, by the way.
Yes.
So I just wanted to go back there and do the research. But then I kind of like had a boyfriend who was also in academia. And when we started renting an apartment, we realized that at least one of us had to find, this quote, real job and
Yes.
not do just the research. And because he was a little bit older than me and he was doing his PhD for 2 years already, we discussed it and we decided that it made more sense for me to just forget about my academia dreams and go
Oh,
to find some decent job. That's what I did. I
very sad.
Yeah, so the only thing that I knew how to do aside from the research, I knew how to create content. So I started looking for some job in that was content related, and I was hired as a PR manager and content marketing manager in a telecom company where I worked for almost a little bit less than 2 years, and
Hmm.
that was the only time in my history that I worked as an employee. After
Okay.
that, for 18 years, I was building my own businesses because I realized that I was totally unemployable. I just, I was so horrible in being an employee because I always was more focused on, like making an impact, trying to create a value. And if I didn't realize that I created this value, if I didn't realize that I was doing something impactful, something that was really making a difference, something that people really needed, I felt constantly depressed because when I worked in this big marketing department, I realized that like 99% of my time was dedicated to totally unrelated to marketing jobs, like uh, try waiting for our big boss to show up, doing nothing, just spending your time in the office doing nothing, or just writing and rewriting and writing again that content that would never be shipped or just will be of no use to anyone. And this realization just moved me to the entrepreneurial journey. And when I was asked to join a team to become a co-founder in a content marketing agency, I just jumped on this opportunity straight away without again thinking what I was going to, how I was going to make money, what I was going to use to rent my apartment. And luckily for me, I didn't have this boyfriend anymore, so I was on my own. And well, I just started this content marketing agency with two other co-founders who had much more experience in it than I did.
Mhm.
They had a background with Harvard Business Review, and they knew much more about content that I did. And it was such an amazing experience just being with people you could look up to, you could learn from,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed every single day that I spent with them building this business, and we did pretty well. I mean, in 3 years, we grew it to one of the top 20, I think, nationwide
Wow.
agencies.
Was this still in India? Were you
No,
still
no,
in?
no, no. It wasn't in India. I was working in Cyprus then.
So tell me one thing that I found really interesting. You were born in Russia, right?
That's right. Yes.
And then you moved to India. So this is something fascinating for me because I was in India and I have a lot of friends from India as well. And I was actually never in Russia, so I don't really know how it is there. But at least in comparison with Europe, India is a completely different world, and the mentality and everything is so different.
Yes, it is.
And I understand when you say that it's fascinating because it is definitely fascinating. It's very interesting because again, it's something that I've never experienced before. I just want to understand how this experience in India affected you also as a person and as an entrepreneur. What were the things that you learned by kind of growing up there?
And it's very hard, for me to talk about the ways that India influenced me because I never know how it would have been right if I stayed in Russia. But
Right.
the only thing that obviously made me different from other people that I met throughout my life, that again I was very open. I believe so, at least, to opportunities that could be unimaginable for other people. Like I became very open to differences in cultures, to
Mm.
diversity, to different points of view, and to different ways of seeing the world. Because sometimes, especially now, it's very important to understand that right now in like in the world that mostly went online with all this social media, we all somehow exist in our own information bubbles.
Mhm.
Uh,
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
we like we want to communicate with people who are like us, and we want to hear the points of view that we share. And if we don't if we don't share some point of view, we just block these people, we just don't follow them.
Yeah.
And that somehow creates these little information bubbles that we feel very comfortable in, and we like believe that the whole universe, the whole world share our opinions. That is totally untrue. It's just
Yeah.
the people in our information bubble who think like us, who we
Uh-huh.
follow, who we exchange these opinions. But the world outside this information bubble is much wider, it's much more diverse, it's much different. And like, I think living in India for so many years, the important thing that it taught me is that there could be totally different points of view, something that you don't believe in, that you don't share, but
Mm-hmm.
they also have their own right to exist.
Right.
And the more different points of view you listen to, the more diverse opinions and experience you try to embrace and absorb,
Yeah.
the better off you will be. The more successful, the more understanding, the more like full your picture of the world would be.
Yeah.
And you will meet and understand much more opportunities, and you will meet much more interesting people. Even if you don't agree with them, it doesn't mean that they can be interesting or
Yeah.
accomplished or
Definitely.
experienced or whatever. And you know what, I'm very passionate about behavioral economics now, and I try to read a lot
What
of,
is that?
yeah, so why people choose this product over another, how to understand the pricing point. Or, for instance, the recent research that I've been reading, it's very interesting in terms of understanding how bad and good experience influence their overall impression of the product. For instance, we all know that the unhappy customer would like go out and tell bad things about your product to 10 other people, right? So every founder tries to create a good impression on everyone,
Right.
and founders try to invest a lot in customer service, because that's very big pain point for every product. When a consumer is unhappy, they mostly unhappy with customer service.
Yeah.
And well, but they know that if a customer is unhappy, they will probably go and pitch you and leave a very negative review on your product on the internet, on social media. They will start talking about how unhappy they are, and that will increase the risks for the product itself. And actually, there's been a research, I think I read about it. I just don't remember where they ran this research, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15, about like colonoscopy, you know, this procedure when you put the little tools to see what the insides of your guts, right?
Ah,
If
yeah,
there's
yeah,
something
yeah.
wrong with your body. And what can be more
Fun.
unpleasant than that? Right? There is very few things that you can think of that are more unpleasant than colonoscopy. And still scientists figure out that the experience can be totally different based on the length of the procedure, the ways people remember the experience, the ways they perceive how unpleasant it was actually depends on the length of the procedure. So the faster it goes, the more negative memories they have about it.
Really?
Yeah,
I would
that's
say it would be the
fascinating,
opposite.
because I will tell you why. Because there is like the end of the procedure. The closer the end of your experience to the lowest point of your experience, the more negative memories you will have. So if and all the way around, the closer the end to the higher point of your experience, the more positive memories you will have. That's why, and if you look at the successful products, you will see that that's exactly the case. Like in Disneyland, or take the roller coaster,
Mm-hmm.
the highest, the most exciting loop, it's always like located closer to the end, right?
Right.
So that's why we go this wow experience, and we remember it because the highest point of the experience was located very close to the end.
Right.
And with unpleasant experience, when they last, when you have this very short experience and it's very unpleasant, and the end is very close to the lowest point, you will have more negative memories about it. And it was proven with this colonoscopy experiment when they made the procedure a little bit longer. So the body gets used to these unpleasant feelings, and then they have 2 more minutes or 5 more minutes until the end of the procedure. The memory is like 80% rated this experience less negative than it was in the previous group. That's fascinating, right?
It's very interesting, and I think it's also now, if I think about movies, right, or series, the peak is now always more towards the end, right? So it's not
Yes,
the climax of the
exactly.
story. It's always more towards the
And
end.
all the principles of storytelling, if you look
Yeah.
at it, right, this the moment of truth, the high pitch moment, the moment when that delivers the whole value of the story, it's usually located. You try to locate it as close to the end as you possibly can, because it will be the one that people will memorize. And
Interesting.
these kind of things are very important to use. Again, marketers try to use it in actually structuring consumer experiences. So if you are having this, very unpleasant conversation with a very unhappy customer on your in the call center, or when they reach out to customer service and they narrate their problem, their pain points, and they're very unhappy, even a little bit, just asking them to take 2 more minutes to rate the experience or to answer some very generic questions at the end of the conversation, it already will have a positive impact on the overall memories of the customer about this experience, because the end point of the experience doesn't match the lowest point. If you take another 2-3 minutes of their
Yeah,
time
yeah,
just chatting about generic stuff, or
yeah.
asking them to rate, or just asking them some generic questions, it will already influence their experience in a more positive way.
This is super interesting and super useful also for startup builders and bootstrappers.
We were talking about diversity and about including
Yeah.
different experiences in your worldview, and all the latest research in behavioral economics and behavioral science, they show that basically our brain, we don't actually know the outside world, what is the reality, because our brain being locked inside our skull, it doesn't have direct connection with the outside world. So we basically, our brain is a big machine of creating predictions.
Right.
That's the modern, like, contemporary view of what our brain does. That's the whole point. Our brain has to predict if we have to switch on flee or fight instinct, right?
Right.
Is it, are we facing something friendly, or are we facing something dangerous? And it has to create these predictions very fast, based on millions and millions of signals it gets from the outside world, but also based on our personal experiences. Everything that we went throughout the years, it's like this knowledge base that our brain uses to create these predictions. And obviously, the more, like, diverse experiences we're having, the more diverse conversations we're having with totally different groups of people, obviously with people who we agree with, and again with people who we disagree with, it contributes to this knowledge base, to this, like, the material that our brain uses to create the predictions. And obviously, the better we are, the more opportunities we face, and the more
Right.
interesting experience we will have in future.
Yeah. And it also helps to break the misconceptions, right? So I remember, for instance, here in Portugal, there was a telenovela about India, and then there was all of these misconceptions. It was all the cliches, the casts and dancing and so on. And then when I started actually meeting a lot of friends from India and actually going there, I saw that it's much more complex, much different than what they were portraying in that series, right? So
Yeah,
you also get to see with your own eyes and really understand. And then it's also, you have an extra argument when you're explaining this to people, right? So now when I came back and my parents was like, yeah, in India they're, I don't know, they still have a lot the caste system for India. And I said, no, it's actually changing. That's most of my friends don't care about that. So it gives you an extra argument also to discuss with them.
yes, that's exactly. But we are just human beings. It's easier for us to oversimplify things because, again, there are so many signals in the outside world that it's much easier to create this very simple
Hmm.
picture
Hmm.
of the world.
Right.
It helps us to be more efficient and operate faster
Hmm.
when we deal with simpler things. But
Yeah.
as soon as you start digging into any subject, like any specifics, you start realizing there are so many layers that no one is even aware of, right?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
picture is much more complex
Yeah.
and much more interesting that you could have imagined.
But
That's
then I have a question for you, Anna. When at least I feel like this, you when you live in your own bubble, somehow it's easy for you to make decisions because for you everything is clear. It's black and white, and you say, okay, this is my decision, and everyone else is wrong. The moment you start understanding others' perspectives, you start, as you said, you start to see colors. You see, okay, there's many shades and there's many opinions. Does it become harder for you to make a decision because you're always unsure since there are so many possibilities?
Yes, absolutely. That's the case. That's obviously the case. As soon as you start including different options, as soon as you start including this optionality or randomness or just different shades and aspects of reality and your decision making process, obviously it becomes more complicated. But again, with a simplified picture, maybe in terms of psychologically, it's easier for you to decide this way or another. But then in this case, you much more make yourself vulnerable to anything that can go wrong because you don't include this optionality in your picture. There is no plan B for you, right? You only
Hmm.
understand plan A based on your worldview. That is super simplified.
Interesting. So you think that also by exposing yourself to different perspectives, you also become somehow more flexible, and it's easier for you to maneuver when something doesn't go your way.
Yes, absolutely. That's
Interesting.
100% the case
Hmm.
because as soon as you start realizing that there are so many factors that can
Yeah.
influence your success, you start creating this risk management
Hmm.
options. At least you start thinking as a risk manager. You start realizing that this
Yeah.
thing can go wrong, these things, and okay, obviously there always will be black swans, right? Something
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you never would have predicted, like this current situation with like obvious war in
Hmm.
Europe, or like COVID. No one could have predicted it.
Yeah.
There are obviously things that will happen that you would never have guessed
Hmm.
would happen. But again, as we can see with COVID, we adapted to it pretty fast
Hmm.
because there are so many things that were already in place that we could use to get the most out of this situation in terms of medicine, in terms of technology, in terms of communication. Uh, Maybe no one thought about like go all the global economy getting shut down, right, and everyone being locked in their own houses. But we already had created so many tools that we could use for these purposes, and people started thinking about these plans B from day one.
Hmm. Yeah.
If we were not flexible, if we were very, like very existing opportunities focused, like this is how we think it should be, and we don't want to be flexible, we don't want to think the other way around.
Yeah.
I believe that would never have happened. We were still like we would be still sitting waiting for vaccines to show up
Yeah, yeah,
miraculously.
yeah. And I think that this mindset is crucial for any entrepreneur, right? You need to think about have multiple plans, multiple exits, and I think this is also a great bridge to for you to tell the story of the company. So is the company called Shanghai Pot the one that was making the
Yeah,
4 million?
that was my basically third one.
Uh-huh.
That when I exited, when I sold my equity in content marketing agency, because we
Mm-hmm.
started when web started to explode, basically so many aspects, so many customers of ours, so many people start moving online, and I realized that that's the future of communication. We should start moving online. But my co-founders, they were very, you know, this kind of people that didn't want to think about plan B. They were
Yes.
already in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
First of all, they were much older than I was, and they were
Uh-huh.
already seeing like we were doing great.
Right.
We had so many customers, we had revenue coming in without any extra efforts from our side. We already had built a brand, we had built a reputation, and most of our deals were just inbound. People were just reaching out because of the referrals, because of the
Mm-hmm.
again CEO. That was working pretty well for people who are like maybe have achieved something.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually very hard to move to new markets and new industries where they have to admit that they're like newbies. They don't know anything about it. They have to hire someone to help, like a consultant or whatever, and they have to start again from ground zero. And I just said, okay, no worries, I'll just sell my equity and I go out there and build my own agency. But that's not what happened. I was invited to help with building a magazine for retailers.
How were you invited for that? How did you get the opportunity? Like friends message you,
Yeah, that was through the friends.
and you were in Cyprus, and then
Yeah,
you
so I
moved.
moved back
Okay.
to Russia to help them with this magazine, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how I realized that okay, there is a whole new big industry that is growing in this country. After like 6 months of working with the magazine, I realized I wanted to build my own retail chain as well. So I didn't want to be only about content. I wanted to be about product.
Mm.
And I started opening these stores, but I tried to include my Oriental studies background,
Right.
and I tried to integrate this passion that I had about India, about Asian culture, about Asian cuisine, and I
Mm-hmm.
basically started opening Asian grocery stores. And also, I tried to integrate my experience with content marketing. And it was not just regular grocery stores, but we also held cooking classes there. So it was like mixed concept. It was a cooking school together with a grocery store. So
Wow.
people could come in there, they could cook, they could learn how to cook Asian cuisine, and they could also buy some products like ingredients
Mm-hmm.
for the food they were about to cook.
Mm-hmm. What's the investment for opening such a business?
I tell you, it was just I fundraised for just one store. So
Okay, so you went
basically,
fundraising. You got tried to get
so
investors.
I invested the money that I got from selling my equity in the content marketing
All of
agency.
the money?
No, I found a co-investor, but they just invested
Right.
in one store. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the deal. They would invest in one store, and they just exited. I bought out their equity as soon as we start growing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I like the concept because it was a challenge to bring the product to the market
Mm-hmm.
that didn't have this culture of Asian cuisine.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know much about Russian culture, but what I again the misconceptions maybe is that it's everyone is more closed. Okay, this is our food, and coming with such an external type of food and cuisine, I thought that would never work. Was that a problem?
Yes, yeah, that was the challenge. I mean, if I opened it in Europe, maybe
Yeah.
would have grown faster, because there is big Asian community in Europe. There are lots of
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
people from Thailand, from India, obviously from China. So there is already a ready to serve market, right? There are people you can reach out to
Mm-hmm.
sell your product. But on the other hand, the competition is much higher. So there are so many grocery
True.
stores. Even
True.
here in Cyprus, we have Asian grocery stores, and they're very, community based. So all these stores are run by the representatives of this specific community. So if it's an Indian grocery store, it will be like 100% run by someone who is like from India, because they have connections with the supply side and the demand side. They
Yeah.
already have roots in the community here, and they have connections with the suppliers in India. So it makes sense for them to open an Indian grocery store. For me, it was like very challenging, because I didn't have like strong connection with okay, I had some connection with the supply side, had some connection with manufacturers and suppliers in India, because like I basically grew up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But it
Do you,
wasn't
do you
like
speak the
direct
language?
connections. It was not like my family owned the plant there, right?
Right. Right. But do you speak
Anyway,
it? Do you speak Hindi? Can you speak with
yeah,
them?
I spoke. I mean, I speak Hindi, but I did not use it for so many years. So
Okay.
it's like dormant. I can read mostly now. I can
Sanskrit. You
understand,
can
but I
read
would not
Sanskrit.
start
Wow.
speaking, because language is something that moves away very fast from your memory if it's not in
Ah,
active use.
okay. Yeah.
So yeah, and it was totally different in Russia, because there was no big Asian communities here. I mean, especially in European part of Russia, there is big Asian community on the Far East. There are lots of Chinese people, but in European, in Moscow, there are not so many
Mm-hmm.
Indians or Chinese or Thai people that you can like immediately reach out to make them your customers. And so my idea, my goal was to reach out to Russian people and to introduce them to Indian, Chinese, and Thai cuisine, because that's a much bigger market. And that's what I now try to convince founders not to do under any circumstances. That when you have to educate your customers
Mm-hmm.
about the problem, you try to convince them that they have a problem that your product is about to serve.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very hard and challenging journey. It demands either lots of investment. Basically, you have to invest a lot. It's either time or money.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you
Yeah.
have to start buying commercials on TV, just to pitch yourself to most of TV channels, trying to get on all information distribution channels that you can think of, or it just takes a very long time to bring this product to the customers. And it did. It took me maybe 3 years just to get the flywheel going.
Wow.
So though it was basically a startup, the
Mm-hmm.
innovative concept, and I tried to address the audience that was basically not ready for this concept. It took us 3 years. I say us because I was like I had this co-investor, but they were not
Right.
basically co-founder. They did not
Yeah.
contribute
They're
into,
like silent partners.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a team
Okay.
of like choosing managers,
And
marketers.
just for me to understand, like, what was your situation there? So you invested the money.
Mhm.
Were you also taking a salary from that? How were you surviving?
Yeah, I didn't take any salary. I'll tell you, for I think 8 months.
Okay.
That's how long I could last on my
Mm-hmm.
own savings. But after that, I kind of started taking salary, because I had to feed my family. And because there was a store with retail, it's maybe a bit easier with the software product, because
Right.
with the store, again, it's location, and
Yeah.
location. and
Yeah.
and we invested a lot in choosing the right location, and we started getting
Hmm.
revenue from day one,
Okay. Yeah.
though it
Got
was
it.
not profitable for a very long time. it
Hmm.
brought revenue from that. So I still had some turnover to basically take for my salary. It took us 3 years to grow
It's a long
this
time.
concept
It's a long time.
and to get the flywheel going. But I believe again, it's because I just caught this trend very early on. When Russian people started traveling a lot, they started like going to Thailand, to Goa in India, they
Yeah.
started like seeing the world. And this when this middle class started growing, the level of life started getting better. They started
Hmm.
wanting something else aside from something that they had got used to.
Yeah.
So this trend, we just caught this trend. Like we were in the beginning of this trend, and we basically grew with the market.
Yeah. You created a trend somehow as well, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I try to contribute a lot in this, in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
interest in Thai and Indian cuisine that eventually happened. Like it was an explosion of this interest in the beginning of 2000, like 2010, 2013, before
Hmm.
this horrible, again, this war that Russia started. But
Hmm.
again, the whole product, maybe the whole concept, I closed it because I was in a very big disagreement of the international politics. So
Mm.
the trend that brought us to the top, it also brought us to the bottom, because
What do you mean?
emotionally it was very hard for me to start to keep doing business in this country. And I'm very happy, that I didn't face this decision like a month ago, because I obviously couldn't have carry on with this
Yeah.
project,
Yeah.
and paying taxes to the country that
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting. Speaking a little bit about that. So Russians started to travel more, right? So they
Mhm.
were also broadening their horizons and broadening their mindsets. So I guess there's definitely also a lot of people in Russia that are completely against the invasion and what's happening, because also they know that other perspectives, and I really believe that by traveling, people start kind of opening, as you said, opening their minds and accepting other ways of thinking, right?
I can tell you that all friends that I left in Russia, they all got arrested because they were protesting.
Wow,
Like every single one of them.
that's
Like
scary.
everyone that I know in Russia, like all my friends, everyone, like I went to the university because I went to university in Russia. This Oriental Studies degree, it's from the Oriental Studies Institute in Moscow. Like everyone that I know from that time, and people who I worked with in my retail project, they all got arrested because
Wow.
they were protesting.
Uh,
And yeah, obviously, like many people, again, these educated people who again embraced the global culture,
mhm.
the diversity of thinking. They like the right for everyone to live the life that they want.
Right, exactly. Uh-huh.
Basically, the right to be free. Uh, they obviously against this campaign, as they call it. I know so many people are just afraid to express their point of view because they believe that they it will harm them or their relatives or
Right. And
that.
it rightful so, right? If you protest and you get arrested, I mean, I would be scared too, to be honest.
If I look at the history of like Russia, every generation in the last 300 years, they have this disruption in their history. Every like 30, 40 years, they have
Hmm.
this big revolution or war or something huge happening with the whole generation. And many people in Russia that I personally know, they're just so afraid of any change. They just don't want to go out there and protest because it's like kind of inducing change. They
Right.
just want to hide and pretend that nothing is happening because every generation in like 300 years, they went through some very big disruption. And
Right.
it impacts culture, obviously,
Hmm.
somehow. It's hard. It's very tough topic. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean, it's very hard for me to say that I'm against it. And, help refugees here in Cyprus. We have a lot of them here right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
And like go to protest. We went out to protest with my 3-year-old and my 8-year-old. We went protesting every weekend. But here in Europe, it's so safe. It's totally different.
It's just trying to put myself in their shoes, and it's a very hard situation, right? Also, with all the sanctions, that it's definitely affecting the life of a lot of people there in Russia that do not agree with this. So it's really hard. So in your point of view, what is the way out? Like, is there a solution? Do you think?
Oh my, I'm definitely not a politician. And I mean, in ideal world, in a perfect world, every solution should be left to entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs also mess up the world, right? If you think about the oil industry, or so even like you think about social media, it's also bringing some down effects,
It's
right?
not the entrepreneurs, that's the usage of maybe social media, right? That's not
Right.
it wasn't the whole idea of creating like Facebook for people to start spreading hate speeches there.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
idea was to connect students of the some specific colleges together,
Right.
and like make them offer them a tool to share their journeys, their experiences, and stay together online.
True, but if you think about, for instance, Facebook, the monetization was also a problem, right? So selling users data.
Yeah, that's right. It's just like with the atomic energy, right? You can create
Yeah.
a bomb out of it, but it can also, it's the safest way to create energy, and it's the cheapest one.
Yeah, 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 definitely.
It's much cheaper and ecologically friendly than
Mm-hmm.
burning coal, for
True, true.
instance.
And I totally agree with you. I think entrepreneurs, that kind of motivates me. Like, you have the possibility as an entrepreneur to change the world. I think you can. Then you also, with as the in Spider-Man, right? With big responsibilities comes what is it? Big responsibilities come big. No, with big powers come
Big
big
responsibility.
responsibilities,
Yes,
and with
exactly.
entrepreneurs is the same, right? So we have big powers and the power to change the world, and we need to use it wisely as well, right? We can change it for the better, and or we can also change it for the worse. But
Yes,
I
yeah,
agree with
that's.
you.
I
Yeah,
believe,
definitely we can change.
being a parent, and having this like written on my sleeve every single day.
Yeah. So quickly going back here to our storyline, because we're also kind of running out of time, but I would still like to understand what happened here. So definitely I could understand when you're building Shanghai pots that it was a lot of stress for you, because you're like teaching people about all this Asian cuisine and like somehow creating your own market, which is super super tiring. How long were you working per day? I bet you're doing crazy
Yeah, it
hours,
was,
right?
I think, about 16,
Wow.
sometimes even 18 hours a day. And I also had my first baby then.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think basically, I have no one to blame for the fact that I went through this burnout.
Hmm.
It obviously was all my fault. I probably don't have enough leadership skills to.
Hmm. So you didn't delegate enough.
Yeah, and I'm
Hmm.
like total freak control. I don't delegate a lot. I micromanaged a lot, and I think my biggest failure was that I did not pay enough attention. So I paid lots of attention to marketing side, to distribution channels. I
Hmm.
try to, bring our brand to the customers using all the opportunities that I could think of. I pitched
Hmm.
myself to all TV channels, to all, podcasts. I try to establish connections with all the influencers that I tried I could find out in this
Hmm.
field, and but I did not invest too much of my time into building a strong team, into like trying to create a solid structure around this business, in terms of people management, in terms of talent management. So I built more or less like automated workflows around marketing.
Hmm.
around purchasing, around financials, because again, when you build like big retail chains, there is a lot of cash flow going through, and you like can negotiate better deals with the banks. You don't have to fundraise, you just can go and get a credit, because you have like pretty impressive level of revenue.
Hmm.
Even if they look in your books and they realize that it's not as profitable as it could be, but just the revenue, the turnover is a very good tool to negotiate a better deal with the bank.
Yeah, yeah, gives you a lot of
But I
credibility.
didn't invest too much of my time and energy into people, into
Yeah.
building a strong team that could deal with the business when I out of sorts, when I get sick, or just when I want to take some time off, or when so basically I was into every single process that deal
Wow.
with hiring. When you're building a company and you start hiring, there are two options for you. You either have to hire players A, that would be, entrepreneurial spirits, people that you don't have to provide with very direct guidelines.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
just can tell them, here is your goal. You just go ahead and try to get there. And they would build all the processes around it. So
Right.
basically, that's players A, but you have to invest a lot of your time into creating an A game for them,
Hmm.
because they would stick around only if they're not motivated very easily with monetary rewards. They are
Right.
not into it for salary. They want to grow as
Yeah.
professionals. They want to grow as people, as persons. They want to understand. They want to be excited about their
Yeah.
work every single day.
They want to make
And
an impact,
yeah,
right?
exactly. And that's why I left, that big corporate world, because I want
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
entrepreneurial spirit, and I didn't want to stick
Same.
around
Same.
because
Same
they
for
did
me.
have nothing to motivate me with.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I went in there to be in for salary, but I couldn't stick around for long, because I'm not just this kind of person.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
if I hired someone who were like me, I like didn't realize that they also had the same like
Exactly.
buttons
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
push on. They had the same motivations, and I tried to build my rewarding system, the compensation plans based on only like how much they can make.
Hmm.
And they probably went in for salary, but again, they didn't want to stick around because I didn't provide them with the A game,
Right.
something that they would be challenged to. I didn't provide them with challenges. I didn't
Hmm.
provide them with something that would excite them.
So you couldn't keep them. You couldn't keep them in the company.
Yeah, they would end up leaving the company, and I just was like facing this necessity to hire more and more people every
Got it.
single
Got
day,
it.
just trying to navigate all the aspects of this business, trying to wear all the hats.
Yeah. And that led you to a burnout.
Yes, it led me to a burnout.
How's that? How did you feel it? Was it the classic like you couldn't do anything, just
Yeah,
looking
it
to?
was like a classic depression. There were little early signs when I started waking up every single day, and trying to not to get out of bed as long as I could, just not embracing the upcoming events, the
Hmm.
day that I was facing, not thinking about it in a positive way.
Because you were such an important piece of the whole business that I guess it was also not easy for you to just okay, let's disconnect now for a month or so. You couldn't do that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how did you
Exactly.
fix it? How did you get? Did you like eventually say like, okay, I can just not do it. I need to kind of take care of my health first. How did you get out of that situation?
I actually was starting of thinking a second baby.
Okay.
That was my biggest motivation. So I realized. I mean, I always wanted to have like more than one,
Mm-hmm.
and at least two. And I started seeing that because I also wasn't the only child in the family, and I started seeing, this very selfish, like kind of attitude in my elder one, that he started like seeing himself as a center of the universe.
Right.
He had no competition in the family, all the relatives, his parents, but for me, probably because I was working a lot, he was very like self-focused and trying to kind of manipulate people too much. And I
Right.
didn't like it a lot. And I was like feeling that I'm not getting any younger again.
Hmm.
And it was time to start thinking of the second child. And I realized that I just can't do it. Living in this kind of crazy 18 hours working day, it
Right.
was impossible. It wasn't healthy for anyone. And I started thinking, how can I make it less intense for myself? And also, I started realizing that I just could not do it.
So when did you leave? What year? Okay.
2018, I just shut it down and then I left.
Ah, okay. So very somehow recently, right? 4 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, I can say that I just shut it down. I just sold
Yeah.
some of the assets that were sellable. Yeah, it was 2 million annual revenue.
Mhm.
But not all the locations were profitable. With
Right.
retail, it's very low margin and very capital intense type of business,
Hmm.
where you have very impressive revenues. But sometimes I remember this month that I had to max out my credit cards to pay the salary.
Wow.
That might sound crazy, but it happens sometimes.
Hmm.
So yeah, the locations. I tried to separate the assets that they were profitable that I could sell, and
Hmm.
I sold them, and the ones that
Wow.
were not so like sellable, I just
What an amazing experience you have. I find it so interesting. You've done so many things, and now you are now I guess your main business is the consultancy company that you created, right? So you're trying to go a little bit more smaller this time.
yes, I definitely. With this experience that I had with total, emotional breakdown that I had when I moved to Cyprus, it's very quiet location. There is
Hmm.
very low crime rates. It's a great place to be in if you are 8 years old or if you're over 88 years old. It's amazing
Yeah.
place for little children and for retirement. It's definitely not the best maybe location for someone who is very ambitious, and it's
Right. Right.
more very, now it's changing because again, very many startups are trying to get here. Many developers from Russia who are fleeing from the country, and from
Mm.
Ukraine, they're coming here. Well, when I moved in here, I was totally sure that I would do nothing for like until I die. Like until I 80 years old, I would do nothing anymore because I was so tired.
Okay. Yeah. Hmm.
But then, obviously, in after 3 4 months, I started looking for
You
other
cannot stop. Yeah.
opportunities. What can I do here? And I was invited. Actually, how I ended up with like startup mentorship and dealing with startup community. I like. I was invited to lecture in a local venture fund.
Hmm.
They have an accelerator for local startups. The founder of this venture fund, he was a friend of mine. He's a friend of mine from my previous work experience in Cyprus. And they asked me to just come and lecture the founders, talk to them about building businesses. And because I built this a retail startup, they thought that I had this the experience that would be valuable for them. I mentor with the Founder Institute. They have global presence with the headquarters in the US, but I mostly deal with Eastern European startups and Middle East startups
Okay.
because of the time zone. It's closer.
Hmm.
And but with Middle East startups, with companies, with someone who is trying to build something in countries like Iraq or Afghanistan,
Yeah.
it's especially tough. But I feel
Hmm.
very, that I really make an impact when I help them to build even something
Yeah.
as small as little business that would bring food on their own table
Hmm.
and help them to feed their families. It's already great,
Yeah.
big deal for me.
I think for an entrepreneur, this is the best reward. Let us make our impact. Let us help someone else. I think that's definitely
Yeah,
what we
exactly.
want. And Anna, thank you so much. I will link your Twitter on the show notes of this episode, and anything else that you want me to show there, I will, so that everyone
Yeah,
can follow
I'm
you.
also like trying to be more active on LinkedIn.
Okay, we'll also share that.
So I would appreciate if you link my account from there.
Yeah.
And yes, that's basically it. I also create lots of written content. I have a newsletter, but anyone who follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, any social media, they can easily get a link to my newsletter as well, and get my
Okay.
content in their mailboxes like once or twice a week.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Was amazing to chat. Again, I always appreciate this opportunity to talk
Yeah.
to
And
more founders and deliver all the experience and knowledge that I have.
mhm. And you have a great story to tell. And now for the listeners, if you want to listen to more entrepreneurial stories and journeys, make sure to go to wannabe-entrepreneur.com. We have a lot of interviews and a lot of episodes for you. And if you are a beginner bootstrapper and you want to find a community of people to help you out, check out the WB Space, our community or virtual co-working space for entrepreneurs, and we all work together in our projects. It's really fun. So make sure to check that out. This was another Wannabe Entrepreneur. See you next time.